Welcome everyone. Thanks for joining us today. As Chris said, I am Brian Cook. I am the application engineer here at Computer Aided Technologies, specializing in our electrical products. That's SOLIDWORKS Electrical and SOLIDWORKS PCB. Today I'll be talking about unifying your design with SOLIDWORKS. So how do we get SOLIDWORKS Electrical and SOLIDWORKS PCB to communicate with SOLIDWORKS? So what I'll be doing, I'll talk about SOLIDWORKS Electrical first, give you a general overview about it, and then we'll talk about SOLIDWORKS PCB, and then we can briefly mention just how they all three work together. That'd be electrical, PCB, and SOLIDWORKS CAD. So we all know that SOLIDWORKS CAD is a wonderful tool for mechanical engineers to design the structure and the mechanics of the product. Think of it like the skeleton and the joints. But what about the brain, the muscles, nervous system, right? Think of that, it's kind of like an electrical engineering group. A lot of times, totally different group of engineers working on that system. And traditionally, there's usually a disconnect between the two because you're working with different pieces of software. So what we want to do is get you guys communicating and collaborating, get it so that you guys can have everything in one little system so that you know everything fits. You can easily figure out how long should your wires be and is everything going to fit. So that's where SOLIDWORKS Electrical comes into play. So traditionally the way people work between these two teams because of that disconnect is it's a serial design process. Whether you're starting electrically or starting mechanically, some people, different companies do different ways. It doesn't matter. It's usually serial. One person does their work and then hands it over the wall to the other. And then after you're all done, then you work on integrating, making sure everything fits together and merging your documentation together to get one bill of materials. And finally, you can send it out onto the manufacturing floor after a lot of auditing. Right? Well, with SOLIDWORKS Electrical and the collaboration that it provides, we can turn that into a parallel design collaboration so that you can work on the same project at the same time. Your documentation is being built up together, so much less work as far as integrating is concerned, and you can get it out to be built much faster, saving a lot of time on the back end. Okay? Now, how do we manage that? Well, that's based because SOLIDWORKS Electrical is based on a SQL database. Gives a lot of value. So not only do you share symbol and component libraries amongst all the users, but they can also work simultaneously on the same projects. The server keeps everyone up to date with the latest changes in real time, no manual intervention or manipulation of your data files. So one person can be working on the schematic, another person on like a general overview diagram, someone else can be working on 3D. Even another person can just be looking at documentation. And it keeps all of those documents in one location, whether you're working in SOLIDWORKS 3D CAD or SOLIDWORKS 2D schematic. You've got all of your documents in that project sorted, however you sort it, into different folders. So this is your synoptic diagrams, wiring diagrams, which is a top-level overview of basic components, what's the hierarchy here? Where are things located? What's general connections that are being made? We, of course, have the traditional multi-line schematics. We can create terminal strip drawings automatically. Your 2D layouts or 3D, if that's what you're working with. And, of course, all your documentation, such as bill of materials, your wiring list from to, and we have design rule checks that can be run as well. Okay? Again, that's all in one easy to read, easy to navigate document tree. So let's see a little bit of this in action, some of our higher end features. Inside of electrical, you can of course work from scratch, but we have what we call macros, which are basically a user library of circuits. So if I use this motor circuit all the time, I can just click and drag it into my library, give it a name and a description for searchability. And then a little thumbnail appears there, and this is shared amongst all the users. So you can look through the different groups, find whatever macro, circuit library piece you want to use, and you just drag out what you want to use and place it in your schematic. It'll be placed as if you had drawn it yourself. Any sort of component numbers that were there would be renumbered so that you don't have any duplicate components. It keeps all the manufacturer part data that was applied when the macro was created, so you don't have to worry about applying manufacturer parts. And so you're just very easily able to quickly place all of your circuitry, because I know many people do not really work from scratch anymore. It's a lot of copy and paste from previous projects making modifications. So we just try to make that as efficient as possible. So once you're done, you want to number all of your wires, and that's traditionally a very time-consuming part of a project outside of your documentation. For us, it's simply pressing a button, number new wires, and everything is numbered. Okay? I did a project one time, I copy and pasted until I had 50,000 wires. I just wanted to see how long it would take. It took 10 seconds to number every single one of those wires. And it's very customizable as well, so that you can get your wires numbered according to your company standards. So a lot of flexibility, but still fully automated. Now, we said we wanted to unify this and get you working with the 3D SOLIDWORKS environment. So with the SOLIDWORKS 3D add-in, you can place all of your components and then tell it to route all of the wires. Okay? So you end up with a component tree. You see there on the left, it's all the electrical components. I was able to right-click and insert to easily place the 3D parts. Once they're placed, I told it to route wires, and that's what it's doing right now. You can route them as sketch lines, which goes a little bit faster, or as actual 3D models of every wire. It knows all of the connections based on the schematics. So as the mechanical engineer, you don't have to worry about what needs to be connected to what. You just have to worry about placing your components where you'd like them to be placed, and then tell it to route. They follow routing paths that you define, such as center lines down these ducts that are in the cabinet. And there you see all of my wires routed. It knows the length of every single one of those wires and puts that information into the documentation that we're going to generate, our to from list, so that someone can build this. We can also apply segregation rules so that certain wires are not routed next to other wires. Another thing that's really nice, it can calculate the fill ratio of those ducts, because it does know the thickness of each of those wires. So you know whether you're overfilling your duct. Back in the 2D world, or the 3D world, we could do this as well. We're going to generate all of our documentation, bill of materials, table of contents, wire lists. Just press of a button and it generates it, puts it all in our document tree so that it's easy to navigate to those, open them up. And it's fully customizable how it gets generated. What information do you want appeared in your bill of material? What order are the columns? How do you want everything sorted? And things like that. It can also, with the wires, give you a total length of wire that you need. So SOLIDWORKS Electrical, being a parametric product designed from the ground up for electrical design, gives a lot of benefits. That parallel design collaboration that I was talking about, you can work at the same time. You can easily add your components in 3D and then route all of your wires to get your wire lengths and generate all of your documentation. So let's move on to SOLIDWORKS PCB. SOLIDWORKS PCB came out a few years ago, and there's a lot of inexpensive and even free software PCB tools out there. So what makes us special? Well, those free tools out there, they just kind of do the schematic layout and routing for the boards, which works for a lot of hobbyists. But for companies committed to designing quality boards, you're not sure whether they're going to provide the support and reliability, and is it going to continue to be updated in years to come? And of course, you can go all the way to the other end of the spectrum and get those really feature-rich packages out there that do everything you can imagine. Of course, those also come at a very steep cost, which can be I drew a blank on the word. It can be something that is going to prohibit you from being able to buy those pieces of software. So where we aim to meet is the sweet spot of users that are trying to design quality boards, but they don't need the high-end tools that are available in the really expensive software packages out there. So one of the nice things that you can do is get into like the Internet of Things, adding some smarts to your mechanical components. A couple years ago at SOLIDWORKS World, where there was this cat flap there, where someone had added some smarts so that it would only admit your cat into the house rather than the whole neighborhood. You know, it's pretty nice. Or maybe you want to design the Nest thermostat. Or you can just design some small boards for your washing machines, your toaster, or coffee machines. Once you get into things like chip on a board, printed passives, you may want to look at some more expensive software packages out there, but there's still a lot of capability that we provide with SOLIDWORKS PCB. So we do have SOLIDWORKS PCB, which is the schematic software, the board layout, and provides the communication with SOLIDWORKS. If you do need some of the higher end tools, we've partnered with Altium. So you can buy Altium and get our SOLIDWORKS PCB connector, which will then enable Altium to be able to communicate with SOLIDWORKS and provide the collaboration that I will show you. And if you already have some other high-end tool that you find worth paying the price for, you can continue to use CircuitWorks to get into SOLIDWORKS. So SOLIDWORKS PCB does provide the collaboration very seamlessly. It's not exporting step files back and forth. It's just press of a button and everything appears inside of SOLIDWORKS. It also provides the schematic capture and the PCB layout tools inside one software. So you don't have to have two separate softwares for just designing your board on the ECAD side. And it still generates all the deliverables that you may need to get your board manufactured. Your Gerber files, PDFs for your schematics, board layout, things like that. So here's the collaboration in action. I'm inside SOLIDWORKS. I got my enclosure. I just said I wanted to pull a board from our server. I picked the projects that we're working on and told it where to save the assembly file that it's going to generate. And this is a SOLIDWORKS assembly file. And then each of the components will be placed on there as SOLIDWORKS part files. And all of this, it is generating based on all of the ECAD information coming from Altium or SOLIDWORKS PCB. Okay. So this includes silkscreen and copper information. The silkscreen and copper comes as decals. So that way we keep the assembly pretty lightweight. And then you can use standard SOLIDWORKS tools to place it in your assembly and get it mated, positioned. And because it is a SOLIDWORKS assembly and parts, we can edit it in context. Let's change the outline of our board. Make sure it fits inside of our assembly. We can edit the assembly and move components around to line up connectors with the cutouts on our enclosure. And we can push these changes back to SOLIDWORKS PCB or Altium. You can see here the communication back and forth. We say, no, we're changing the outline. We move the connector. Back inside SOLIDWORKS PCB, you get a notification that changes were detected. You can see the changes and preview them before you accept them. You decide you're okay with it, you hit accept, and everything is in sync. This collaboration can go the other direction as well. So if I move any footprints here inside my board layout, I can push. You get a notification inside SOLIDWORKS, and you can preview it, decide whether you accept it, and if you accept it, then everything will be synchronized. It'll move those parts on the assembly. It's not a re-import or anything of that nature that you'd normally have to do with step files. Since it's not a re-import, you do not have to go replace it in your assembly and redo all of your mates. Nothing gets broken. We do have some nice tools inside just our regular schematic capture tool here inside SOLIDWORKS PCB. This is a Supplier Links. So my symbol, I want to search for the part. Who am I buying this from? I can search for the part number, and I can look at all the information coming from Newark, DigiKey, Mauser, Allied Electronics. Right? This is not a local database that it's searching. It's actually searching their websites right from inside the software and finding all this information. How much do they have in stock? What's their current pricing? I just double-clicked on the data sheet, and it opened it up inside my web browser. So really nice to be able to browse around and find all that information inside the software. And then you can attach it to your schematic symbol so that that information will show up inside of your bill of material. So some of the tools that we've got inside of this SOLIDWORKS PCB, we have the schematic capture, like I kind of just showed. We've got the traditional 2D PCB layout. Again, inside the same piece of software, so you're not buying a separate software to do the layout versus schematic capture. It does allow you to do 3D visualization in there as well, so you can check to see if you've got any collisions between your parts. Okay. Of course, we do have the mechanical collaboration that we showed so that you can bring that into SOLIDWORKS and make sure that it doesn't interfere with anything in your enclosures, and you have that two-way communication. We have electrical integration as well. You can get that board represented inside of SOLIDWORKS Electrical, so then you can hook up all of your harnesses and cables that are connecting to that board. So everything being inside the SOLIDWORKS ecosystem, you have a really nice product. You can design your board, you can design your system, put everything in the mechanical assembly, run it through SOLIDWORKS Visualize to have a nice pretty picture for marketing purposes if you need that. So a lot of benefits to being inside of one single ecosystem. So all three products do work together. We've got SOLIDWORKS PCB with its seamless collaboration to 3D CAD. It also can export a 2D representation to make a black box inside of electrical, which I showed at the beginning, SOLIDWORKS Electrical, to do your system design, which again collaborates with SOLIDWORKS to route all of your wires and cables. So you can end up with a nice project such as this. We've got our board there. We inserted connectors, told it to route our wires, and we've got all that documentation easily being able to generate it. So we save a lot of time, we save a lot of errors, or we prevent a lot of errors, I should say. So at this time, if you have any questions about any capabilities, I'm here to answer anything. I guess we put them in the chat window and Chris can relay them to me. Or you can email me at brian.cook@chei.com. Now, if you are interested in any of these products, of course, we do personalized demos, and they go into a lot more in-depth than what I just did here, which was a very brief overview of everything. And we can answer things very specifically to your specific needs in your company and your applications.
Looks like we did just have a question come in, Brian. Requirements for SOLIDWORKS, professional or premium? I'm assuming that means like which level of SOLIDWORKS is required for the electrical packages?
That's a great question. And the great thing is SOLIDWORKS Standard is all you need. SOLIDWORKS Electrical, with SOLIDWORKS Electrical, you have to have the SOLIDWORKS Electrical 2D schematic package, and then you have to have SOLIDWORKS Electrical 3D, which is an add-in that will go into SOLIDWORKS Standard and up. Okay? With SOLIDWORKS PCB, there's no extra add-in required for SOLIDWORKS. You can communicate in SOLIDWORKS Standard and up. So you only have to buy the PCB software for that. And all of these licenses can be network licenses as well. Oh, I got a question to my email. Someone asked, can SOLIDWORKS Electrical import Altium files? The answer is yes. Because we have partnered with Altium. In fact, SOLIDWORKS PCB, the way it works, is very similar to Altium. There's a little bit of a different user interface in how it looks. It looks a little bit more like SOLIDWORKS, but as far as the functionality, it's all very similar. And our file extensions are the same for schematic files. So schematic files can just natively be opened. For PCB files, the extension is a little bit different, but we do have a workflow that can bring your Altium files into SOLIDWORKS PCB. Library files are also able to just natively be used without any sort of conversion.
All right. Thank you very much, Brian. We'll wrap things up here, and any other questions that happen to come in, I'll make note of those, and we'll get those addressed for everyone offline here. But we do just want to mention just a handful of webcasts we have coming up through the rest of July and the beginning of August. We've got one next week on configurations and design tables in SOLIDWORKS. Our additive manufacturing team, you can see that one coming up on July 30th about some new capabilities from the Stratasys line. August 15th is going to be on Visualize. It's going to be a follow-on to our surfacing webcast that we had in June. So looking at, taking those models to the next level. And there we can see towards the end of August, getting into some of the basics of sheet metal. So again, if you want to sign up for any of those, there you can see the schedule. I recognize several names in today's webcast, so I hope to see some of you in the future webcast. So we'll wrap this up. Thank you so much for Brian for putting the content together. Thank you for everyone to attend.